Thank you, Levi. One quick one here. If you could just show just how you could display those volumes on the network, not necessarily the flow bundle, but uh, just the volumes.
Yeah, so we have different graphic parameter files that you can always load up as well. So if you save these as, we have link flows, graphic parameter settings that we have just predefined with the model. So for example, in your graphics section, there is one for link flows, right? And so we don't even have to go in and reconfigure the links to turn on and turn off the different bars. We can see the link flows graphic parameters here. Um, we have the auto, for example. This is all auto. Um, we also have graphic parameters for auto AM and evening and midday and PM. And then you can do things like look at different attributes for tolls and stuff like that. So turning on and off those graphic parameters, you can do them in the links themselves, graphic parameters, and then you'd go to bars and you can create and edit the link bars directly. And then once you have the settings you like, you can come in and go to File and then save that as a graphic parameters file. But we also have a bunch of those graphic parameters files just pre-written, depending on, if you want to do a network flows, link flows. I think we have a couple presets for select link autos as well that you can load up. Does that kind of answer the question? Did I kind of
Yeah, and
say
maybe
that?
just show how you could get a label.
Oh yeah,
Like,
in the labels, yeah. So in this case, graphic parameters, you can obviously on the links, you can activate labels and things like that. So at the link level, you'll just want to make sure you have that draw labels on. And if you're doing link bars can also have labels. We just have them turned off, but you can turn on the labels here and configure what types of labels they are and whether they're directional or link totals and things like that. So again, at the link level, you'll draw labels, and then there's a label section where you can configure what the label is referencing. Maybe we talked about it yesterday, maybe you want to reference the AM volumes or the number of lanes or something like that, or maybe the facility type. You can activate the labels there as well. And again, to make your life so much easier, um, I would recommend if you have a certain graphic overlay that you particularly like, then to come in and save that as a graphic parameters file so you don't have to keep reconfiguring it over and over again. Maybe you just want to review all the volumes, or maybe you're going through and editing the network or updating the network. You have labels active for number of lanes and facility types and things like that. You just have graphic parameters files that are preset for that, so you can just drag and drop them onto the network. So
all right.
here, yeah, go, yeah.
Okay. One other thing that came up a couple places was uh, if you could maybe show just the list of the paths and how you can scroll through those paths and get data about particular.
Yeah. OD demand. You can look at different trips and paths in the list. So you can look at OD data here. You can look at physical network data, and then down below you have paths. So you can look at the list of paths. And I'm going to put this onto the side over here. Where'd it go? I want to dock it on the side. Oh, there it goes. I'm going to turn this guy off quick. Okay, so now we have our list of paths over here. I'm going to just open up a more generic link flows graphic parameters file, so it's a little bit easier to see. But now we can just pick out different paths that we want to be able to look at, and it'll highlight the zones that they're coming from. And so you can obviously sort this list by demand segment up above. You can also look at flow bundle routes or all routes. You can also sort it a little bit more by origin zone filter. So maybe you want all the paths coming from a specific zone. And then you have obviously your normal column header filters. So you can identify all the paths coming from zone 1 or all the paths going to zone 2, or the path index number as well. So if there are multiple paths coming from a zone, and identify, okay, what is the volume for the analysis period on that path? What is the initial travel time? What is the assigned travel time? What is the initial speed? What is the assigned speed? So here we have a T naught versus T cur. So you can see that there's a 7-second difference, right? And V naught, V cur, they're virtually the same speeds. Some of these paths are going to have V naught, 30 miles per hour, and then a little bit slower on V cur. So wherever you see the attribute and then a 0, that's the initial unloaded speed, travel time, or unloaded speed, and then these are the cur. Wherever you see cur, that is the loaded speed or the loaded travel time. So at the path level, again, it's just in lists, paths, and then you can open up the path lists there.
Excellent, thank you. One other thing, if you just want to open that, maybe like the link list and show those where those volume attributes are. I had a question about that total volume. So I believe that's in there as well as all those time periods.
Yeah, so I'm gonna close down my path list. I'm gonna select links. There we go. All right, so in our links list here, we have a lot of different attributes. If I scroll over to the right, there's a bunch of these attributes all off to the side. And so we have this volume AM, evening, midday, and PM, and then we have this volume all. So what was the question, I guess?
Yeah, I was just showing, somebody asked how you could add up those time periods, and so they automatically do get added up, assuming you run all those assignments, like they're going to get added up.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a procedure in here. Where's my procedure sequence? At the very bottom, so you see how there's a different group assignment for AM, midday, PM, and evening. And then there's a group add up time of daily flows to daily volumes. So there's just an edit attribute procedures that automatically go through and compile all of your link volumes, all of your connector volumes, and these are just an edit attribute procedures. So if we just take a look at this, for example, it's just summing up those attribute values. And then within each time interval, after that time interval, it's doing an edit attribute, for example, on the links, where it's just taking the volume vehicles PRT for the analysis period. So it runs the assignment, which will load the network, and then it saves that to that volume AM. And then when it goes on to the next assignment period, so it'll go to the midday, it'll do the same thing. So it'll, during the assignment, the analysis period, that AP time period, becomes midday. And so that previous time interval gets overwritten. And so after each time interval, we're just saving that time interval's data to this UDA called volume for the time period. And then at the end, we have an edit attribute that sums them up and then saves it to that location. And it does that for the links, connectors, and turns.
Okay, great. One quick one too. We got asked about select zone analysis. So could you show that real quick?
Yeah, so if we go into the graphics, we have isochrones and shortest path search. What are we looking for? We're looking for all the paths leading in and out of a zone. Yeah. So again, you can look at OD pairs, not filters, sorry, lists, paths.
Yeah, select zone is basically the same thing as select link. You just select the object on that graphics menu. So if you want to just load up that flow bundle, yeah. And then over here, you see in the network object, you can select zone and click a zone in the network and run the analysis. And the workflow is best if you just load a pre-configured select link graphic and then do the same thing.
So again, I'll initialize, I'll pick a zone, I'll execute. And here we can see all of the different zones and things like that with those charts and then the flow bundles as well.
Excellent. In Chayton, too, this may be a question for you. We had a couple questions about when that area type and facility type are updated, like when that updates all the other attributes.
So in the beginning of the procedure sequence, there is a calculation for that. Where we say initial network and data prep. So here we have certain calculations for speed capacity update, terminal time addition, and such. So the speed capacity update script, the speed capacity.py, this one looks up the ATFT and uses the lookup table stored in Visum, which is basically the same lookup table that you had in TBF files, let's say if you were working with Cube, and then updates the calculation based on that. So this is basically the substitute for that script.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So when doing a sub area network, do you need to have the path stored in order to create that subnetwork?
Not necessarily, except that there are two ways in which you can develop the sub area. One is without the cordon flow matrix, which means the subnetwork just goes out with a bunch of subnetwork zones, but no demand is exported for the adjusted sub area. If you want adjusted demand matrices also to be exported, or the cordon flows to be exported, then yes, you have to run a traffic assignment with path storage, and then you can export the sub area. And earlier, what Levi meant to say with the flow bundles and such is that Visum allows flow bundles for all of the traffic assignments it has, regardless of algorithm, Frank-Wolf, path-based, stochastic, so forth. It's just that there is a path storage toggle that he showed you earlier, which you can turn on and off depending on your use case. And if you were exporting the sub area with a cordon flow matrix, then you'd basically have the save routes on, then run the traffic assignment with path storage, which will let you export all of that adjusted demand out.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows too, like that file download that we had, by default, that path storage is not turned on. So that will be something if you want to look at those paths or do flow bundles for that unloaded network, you would have to do a model run with that path storage turned on.
Yeah, and the only reason we don't store paths in that case is basically the paths retained are for the last time slice or time period run. So in this case, it would end up storing the paths for the evening time interval. And then we don't want to have that confusion with running the select link, is that it needs to be clear which select link is being run for which time period. So we basically turned off path storage for that reason. So there are no paths, and if you want to do a new select link, you know which period you assign, and then you run the select link based on knowing which period you've just assigned. As far as file size is concerned, the path storage will not over or inflate your file size that much. It's more for this reason of removing the confusion about which assignment has been run most recently, that we didn't store any paths in this network with the full model run.
Because that like loaded network's quite a bit bigger, but that also includes all those skims and things like that, right?
Yeah, that's primarily what inflates the file size, is the metric storage.
All right, let me see if there's any other questions here.
Yeah. One thing you can show Levi quickly is the user-defined tables over here. So if you go for lists and user-defined tables, and then table entries. So this is what we have over here in Visum instead of some of those DVF files that you might be used to for the lookups and such. So all of our lookups are stored in these user-defined tables. So if you click that AM for the selection, yeah. So over here, you can see that we have all of the user-defined tables storing basically the same type of lookups that you're familiar with. So for example, if you look at the speed cap, that's where the speed capacity lookup is. And this basically stores that speed cap adjustment lookup table that's used in updating the speed capacity based on area type, functional type, and lanes and such.
One quick one too. There was a question about like user-defined attributes. So Levi, could you just like show where those are stored and how to just kind of create one real quick?
Yeah, so user-defined attributes are stored in the network listing menu here, and then there's a user-defined attributes section that will give you a list of all the user-defined attributes. You can also just create a user-defined attribute directly in the list. When you go into any list and then click the select attributes button, there's a create user-defined attribute button right here that you could also create directly in the list if you'd rather go that way. So you could either for that specific object. Otherwise, you can come into the user-defined attributes section and then create a new one up here in the corner, and then select the object type that you want to create that user-defined attribute for. So maybe you want a new zone attribute. You click OK, and then you'll get this user-defined attribute editor window. Now there are some rules as to how you create the names and IDs. For example, you'll want to use underscores instead of spaces and stuff like that. But you can create, some sort of zone ID. I don't know, 2055. I don't know, growth. I'm just creating some random user-defined attribute. You can leave a comment, and then you'll select what type of attribute is it going to be. Is it going to be yes, no? Is it going to be a currency, a decimal, an integer? Is it going to be some other units with it? It could be a formula-based attribute. So if you want it to automatically calculate something, you could use a formula, and then you can type in a custom formula here. You can look up other zone attributes. So maybe you take, the XY coordinate and use them together, or some add value 1 or 2, or you're combining enrollment and some employment data and combining it into some growth factor. So that's how you would create the user-defined attribute is in the network, go to user-defined attributes, hit the plus button, or from the list, and then you define the name of the user-defined attribute and what type of attribute is it? An integer, a Boolean, yes or no? Is it a floating point, so does it have decimals? And then is it a calculated or is it entered? So again, if you do a data value, it'll show up as a white box in the list. If you do a formula, it'll show up as a gray box and be calculated from some other attributes. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Levi or Chayton, is there anything else while I'm scrolling through these that you wanted to point out specifically? There are some questions here, but I'm trying to kind of sort through them.
Not.
I know, Chayton, are we able to, I guess we would have to do another run to see like that assignment, what's the word I'm looking for? That like scatter plot.
Scatter plot. It's probably gonna be stored here. So at the end, since we just use it from the attribute itself, so all the way at the end of the procedure sequence, I believe there was in the daily flow group, probably. So
do we want to create an assignment analysis?
yeah, why not? Let's just create it. And what you want to compare here is volume all versus IMPT or directional count. So vol underscore all, and then count. Here, dir count. And then you just run it, click OK and run it. And then calculate chart. Yeah, I think some of the input data is probably off in there. It's probably because you compared everything, all the links in the network. What you want to do is tick the option for only compare greater than 0. So here, click edit, and only objects with observed greater than 0, because the other counts will be 0 where there's no observation. So that would be more like your scatter plot.